My stepmom banned me from family photos, so I started a photography business that went viral. The flash popped, and my stepmom's voice sliced right through it. "Not you, just us." My face went hot so fast it felt like my ears were on fire. I was standing there with one hand halfway lifted, smiling on instinct like a trained idiot, and then I stopped mid-motion because I realized she meant it. She'd positioned everyone in front of the fireplace. Dad in the middle, her pressed into his side, my little half-brother perched on Dad's knee, my half-sister on the arm of the couch, and she'd left a perfectly obvious gap where I had been about to step in. The camera on the tripod blinked red, the timer beeped, and I just hovered, stupidly, beside the Christmas tree like an extra piece of furniture. The living room smelled like cinnamon and pine, and the ham my dad had insisted on glazing himself, and all I could hear was the timer's little beep. Beep, beep, counting down to the moment I'd be officially erased. "Lena," Dad murmured, not looking at me, eyes locked somewhere above my shoulder like if he didn't see my face, he wouldn't have to deal with it. My stepmom, Marissa, didn't even glance my way. She was busy adjusting my half-sister's collar, smoothing her hair, tipping Dad's chin up like she was arranging a display. "It's for the card," she said, bright and clipped. "We're doing a clean one. Immediate family. Immediate family." I swallowed and tasted that metallic, bitter panic that hits when you're trying not to cry in front of people you live with. My half-brother giggled because he thought it was funny that I'd been caught, hovering. The timer beeped faster. I felt my fingers curl into my palm, nails biting skin, and I took one step back, then another, until my shoulder hit the wall. The shutter clicked. The flash went off again, and my stepmom smiled at the camera like everything was perfect. It was a Tuesday night, years earlier, when Marissa first started teaching me how to disappear. I was 13, still wearing my school uniform, sitting on the kitchen stool doing math homework, when Dad brought her over to meet. He'd been divorced from my mom for 2 years by then, and the house still had that half-finished feel. Boxes in the garage, spare rooms that never quite became anything, the faint smell of Dad's aftershave clinging to everything. Marissa walked in like she belonged there already. She had perfect eyebrows and a soft voice that was somehow still firm. She touched Dad's arm when she spoke, like punctuation. She brought a cheesecake and called me sweetheart on the first hello, which should have felt warm but didn't. It felt like being assigned a role. At first, she was careful. She praised me for being so mature and told Dad I was a great kid. She'd offer to help with homework, then drift away the second I started talking, like she'd already checked the box. She'd suggest family activities that were really just things she liked. Markets, brunch, her friends' BBQs, where I was introduced as his daughter with a polite smile, then left to stand quietly with a plate while adults talked over my head. Dad was thrilled to have someone organizing his life again. He started saying things like, "Marissa's really good for us," and I'd nod because he looked so relieved when I nodded. The first time I realized she didn't want me in the picture, literally, was at a friend's wedding. I was 15. Dad had squeezed into a suit that still smelled faintly of mothballs, and Marissa wore a pale blue dress that made her look like she belonged in the bridal party. The photographer was her friend, apparently, which I didn't realize mattered until the family photos started. We were lined up outside the venue, the sun too bright, everyone squinting. Marissa called out, "Okay, immediate family for a quick one," and she physically stepped in front of me like a bouncer. Not aggressively, just smoothly, smiling like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her hand landed lightly on my shoulder and guided me backward. "You can grab the bags, can't you?" She whispered, like she was doing me a favor. "It'll be easier." I stood there holding handbags and suit jackets while Dad, Marissa, and her parents posed. Dad didn't even look for me. The photographer called, "Great. One more." And the shutter clicked and clicked and clicked. It wasn't just that I wasn't in the photo. It was how quickly everyone accepted that I shouldn't be. Later in the car, I said carefully, "Why wasn't I in that photo?" Marissa laughed softly, like I'd asked why the sky was blue. "Oh, honey, it's not personal," she said. "It's just, it was for their family." Dad gripped the steering wheel, eyes forward. "Don't start," he muttered, like I was about to ruin the evening by having feelings. I stared out the window and watched streetlights smear into bright streaks on the glass. I remember thinking, if I say any more, I'm the problem. So I stopped. I learned how to swallow things. The photo bans got more blatant as time went on. Birthdays, holidays, random outings. Marissa had this way of controlling what looked nice. She'd say, "Let's get a quick pic," and then she'd arrange people like she was building a display, always leaving me on the edge or pushing me behind someone taller. When I was in a photo, it was usually accidental, someone else's candid, a friend's snap, never the deliberate posed family shots that got framed and hung. The worst part was the frames. My dad's hallway became a museum of a life where I was only sometimes present. There'd be a big photo of Dad and Marissa at a vineyard, laughing. Another of them with the two little kids after they were born, matching pajamas, glowing. A Christmas card photo every year, same fireplace, same smiles, where I'd either be absent or tucked so far on the end I looked like a neighbor. I used to stop in the hallway and stare, trying to understand what was wrong with me. Not in a dramatic way, just in that quiet, poisonous way where your brain tries to make the world make sense by blaming yourself. Maybe I wasn't cute enough. Maybe I looked too much like Mom. Maybe I reminded Marissa that Dad had a whole life before her. Maybe I was awkward. Maybe I didn't smile right. I'd pick at little things, my posture, my hair, my chin, and think if I fix it, maybe I'll fit. Then one day, when I was 16, I found a stack of printed photos in Marissa's desk drawer while looking for a stapler. It wasn't like I was snooping. I genuinely needed a stapler, and Dad had told me it was in Marissa's office. I opened the top drawer, and there they were, dozens of 4x6 prints. Family outings. Holidays. Photos that had clearly been taken in the exact moments I remembered. And in many of them, I'd been there. Like they're there, standing next to Dad, leaning into my half-sister's pram, smiling at the camera. Except in the prints, I wasn't. At first, my brain didn't even process it. I flipped one over, then another, like maybe I was holding a different set. But no, these are the same photos, edited, cropped so I was just out of frame. Or worse, in a couple of them, it looked like someone had used a cheap blur tool to smear me into the background. The edges where my arm had been were messy, like a ghost had been wiped away. I felt sick, like actual nausea, sweat prickling under my shirt. I stood there holding those photos, and my whole body started shaking. Marissa walked in. She paused when she saw what I was holding. Her smile didn't drop completely, but it shifted, tightened. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice calm. "I needed a stapler," I said, and my voice sounded too high. Why are these like this?" She came closer, took one photo from my hand, and glanced at it like she was checking if it was ruined. "Oh," she said lightly, "those are just drafts." "Drafts?" I repeated. My throat felt thick. She sighed, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. "Lena, you're a teenager," she said. "You don't always want to be in family photos later. It's a phase. And sometimes it's just cleaner. For the aesthetic. For the aesthetic. Histoire de hair." "You removed me," I said, and the words came out flat, like my body was protecting me by shutting down emotion. Marissa's expression cooled. "Don't be dramatic," she said immediately. "Nobody removed you. We just chose the best versions." I walked past her and straight into the lounge room where Dad was watching TV. My hand was shaking so hard the photos fluttered. "Dad," I said. He glanced over, annoyed. "What?" I held up the photos. She edited me out. Dad blinked once, looked at Marissa, then looked back at the TV. "Marissa," he called, not even turning his head fully. "What is she on about?" Marissa stood in the doorway, calm as ever. "She found some draft prints," she said. "It's nothing." Dad exhaled sharply through his nose. "Lena," he said, like he was tired of me already. "Can we not do this? It's Christmas next week. I don't want to blow up." A blow up. My chest tightened. "So you're okay with it?" I asked. Dad's eyes finally met mine for a second, and I swear I saw discomfort, something like guilt. Then he looked away. "It's just photos," he muttered. "You're being sensitive." That was the moment something in me snapped quietly. Not the dramatic, "I'm moving out tonight" kind of snap. More like a tiny internal switch flipping from please let me belong to fine, I'll belong somewhere else. I started taking photos because I couldn't stand being erased from them. That's the honest version. A friend at school had an old DSLR his uncle didn't use anymore. He brought it to a sports day, took a few shots, and when I looked through the viewfinder, the world suddenly felt controllable. Like I could decide what mattered. I borrowed it. Then I saved up and bought a secondhand camera on Gumtree with money from my weekend job. It wasn't fancy. It was scratched, the zoom ring stuck sometimes, but it worked. At first, I took photos of everything. My friends on the oval, my little siblings blowing bubbles in the backyard, the way afternoon light hit the kitchen bench. I didn't post much. I didn't feel confident, but I felt calmer with a camera in my hands. Like if I couldn't force myself into my family's frame, I could at least create my own. Then something weird happened. People started asking me to take photos for them. A friend's mom saw my shots from a school event and asked if I could photograph her daughter's birthday. Then another. Then a teacher asked me to shoot the school play. I started staying late after rehearsals, crouched in the aisle, trying to capture moments that looked like feelings. Kids gripping each other's hands backstage, a parent wiping tears in the crowd, the way someone's face changes when they're seen. It became my thing, the one thing that wasn't dictated by Marissa's aesthetic. When I turned 18, I moved out for uni and took the camera with me like it was oxygen. I studied design and picked up photography gigs on weekends, family shoots, small weddings, graduation photos. Nothing glamorous, just work. But the more I shot, the more I noticed a pattern. Families are messy, and photos are where people try to pretend they aren't. The forced smiles, the stand here, not there. The subtle exclusions, stepkids hovering, partners cropped out, someone always pushed to the edge. I started doing something different without even planning it. I'd quietly pull the edge people in. I'd say, hey, come closer. I'd adjust the lineup so nobody was tucked behind someone else. I'd ask, who's important to you? And then I'd make sure they were in the frame. I'd take the traditional shots because people wanted them, but I'd also take the ones that felt real. Someone laughing mid-sentence, someone holding hands without being told. Client noticed. One mom cried after a shoot and said, no one's ever taken a photo where my stepson looked like he belonged. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just nodded and pretended I was professional, then went home and stared at the wall for an hour. The viral part happened because of one stupid, impulsive post. I've been asked to photograph a friend's engagement party. Halfway through the night, her stepdad made a joke about the real family photo, and I watched her face flicker, just a tiny tightness around the mouth. Later, when everyone lined up for photos, I saw her stepbrother get pushed out of frame by an aunt who said, not you, darling, just blood. The kid laughed awkwardly like it was fine, but his eyes went glassy. I felt my stomach drop because it was like watching my own past replay. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through the photos and saw the moment. The kid standing off to the side, hands in his pockets, smiling too hard. I didn't post that photo. I wouldn't. That felt wrong. But it triggered something in me, and I opened my notes app and typed a sentence I've been holding in my body for years. If you're paying me to take family photos, you don't get to erase family. I posted on TikTok with a quick montage. Hands adjusting collars, people leaning in, a couple hugging a stepkid in the middle of the frame, laughter, messy real moments, all with permission from clients I'd already shared previews with. I added a caption that basically said, I got edited out of my own family photos as a teen, so I built a photography business where nobody gets pushed to the edge. I expected maybe a few likes from friends. It got hundreds of thousands of views in a day, then millions. The comments were a lot. People telling stories that made my throat close. People saying, my stepmom cropped me out every year. People saying, my dad never defended me. People saying, I thought I was crazy until I saw this. Some people were angry at me for making everything about trauma, which was almost funny because those are exactly the people who think pain is inconvenient unless it's theirs. Overnight, my inbox filled with messages. Not just take my photo messages. People asking if they could send me their family pictures to fix. People asking for advice. People asking if I could take their first family photo where everyone was included. It was overwhelming and also validating in a way that made me cry in my kitchen, ugly tears, because it wasn't just me. I wasn't just sensitive. It was a real thing people did to other people, and it hurt the same. I leaned into it carefully. I didn't want to become some cheesy trauma photographer brand. I just started a series, Edge to Center. Every shoot, I'd ask clients if there was anyone who usually got pushed out, stepkids, estranged siblings, partners people didn't like, and then I'd photograph them like they mattered. Because they did. I made a rule: no cropping people out unless they asked. No clean aesthetic that required a person to vanish. The business took off in a way I still don't fully understand. I went from weekend gigs to booked out months ahead. I started charging properly. I hired a second shooter. I rented a tiny studio space above a florist that always smelled like damp leaves and roses. I worked constantly, editing late at night, answering emails, driving to shoots, and it still felt lighter than living in that hallway of photos without me. And then, because the universe has a cruel sense of timing, my dad started bragging. At first, it was harmless. A cousin messaged me. "Your dad posted your TikTok on Facebook like he discovered you." I laughed, but it was that dry laugh that doesn't reach your chest. Then Dad started calling me kiddo again, suddenly warm, like we hadn't spent years in tense silence. He'd forward me articles about young entrepreneurs and write, "Proud of you." Marissa, of course, suddenly wanted photos. It started with a comment on my post. Just a little "so proud of you," with heart emojis like we were besties. People replied to her, thinking she was supportive. They liked her comment. I felt my face heat up reading it, like someone had slapped me through my phone. A week later, Dad called. "Hey," he said, voice overly casual, like he wasn't nervous. "Your stepmom and I were thinking, since you're doing so well, maybe you could do our family photos this year." I swear I almost dropped the phone. My stomach clenched. "You want me," I said slowly, "to take your family photos?" "Yeah," Dad said, rushing. "It'd be special. You know, full circle, full circle." That phrase made something sharp rise in my throat. "Will I be in them?" I asked, and my voice was calm in a way that scared even me. There was a pause. Too long. Dad cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "you'll be taking them." I laughed once, short and humorless. "So no," I said. Dad's voice tightened. "Lena, I'm not doing it," I said. "And I'm not doing this conversation where you pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." He exhaled hard. "Marissa just want a nice photo," he said. And there was again, "Protect Marissa, keep things calm, don't make it blow up." "A nice photo," I repeated, "with the kid she likes in it." "That's not fair," Dad snapped. "Neither was editing me out," I said, and my throat burned. "Neither was telling me I'm sensitive. Neither was banning me from family photos and then asking me to photograph your perfect little version of a family." Dad went quiet. I could hear the faint hum of his TV in the background, the same background noise of my childhood. "You're holding a grudge," he said finally, like he'd found the simplest explanation. "I'm holding a boundary," I corrected, and my hands were shaking now. "There's a difference." He muttered something about how I was making it bigger than it was, and I ended the call because I could feel myself slipping into that old panic spiral where you argue your reality to people who don't benefit from acknowledging it. A few days later, Marissa showed up at my studio. I was editing at my desk when the bell above the door jingled, and I looked up, and there she was, perfect hair, perfect coat, the same tight smile she used when she wanted control. She walked around my little studio like she was inspecting a rental. "It's cute," she said, glancing at the framed prints on the wall. "What are you doing here?" I asked, standing up, heart thumping. Marissa's eyes flicked to my face. "I came to talk," she said, like we were two adults having tea, not a woman who spent years erasing me. "You can call," I said. She laughed softly. "You didn't answer my message," she said, and then her voice took on that gentle, patronizing tone. "Lena, I think you've blown this whole photo thing out of proportion." There it was, like she'd rehearsed it. You still the hair. "You edited me out," I said. "I saw the prints." Marissa's smile tightened. "Those were just," she started, then stopped like she realized denial wouldn't work anymore. She sighed. "Okay, fine. Maybe I did. But you have to understand, I was trying to keep things simple. Simple for who? I asked. Marissa's gaze hardened. For your father, she said, and her honesty startled me more than an apology would have. He was already juggling so much. You were complicated. Your mother. My mother has nothing to do with you cropping me out of Christmas photos. I cut in, and my voice shook with anger now. I was a kid. Marissa looked away briefly, then back. I'm not here to fight, she said. I'm here because people are asking questions now. What questions? I asked. She gestured vaguely at the internet, my posts, the comments. Your story is everywhere, she said, voice tight. And your father's friends are connecting dots. It's embarrassing. There it was. Not remorse. Embarrassment. Image. I felt a cold, strange calm spread through me. So you're not sorry, I said. You're just uncomfortable that other people are seeing what you did. Marissa's lips pressed into a thin line. I think you're being cruel, she said, and I almost laughed because she said it like I was the one rewriting reality. I'm being honest, I said. Cruel is telling a kid she doesn't belong in the family photo. Marissa stepped closer, lowering her voice as if she could keep it private if she whispered. You have a successful business now, she said. You're doing well. Why are you still stuck on this? I swallowed. My hands were tight at my sides. Because it didn't just hurt then, I said. It shaped me. It made me spend years trying to earn a place you decided I didn't deserve. And now you want to show up and clap, like you didn't spend years pushing me out of frame. Marissa stared at me, and for a second her expression flickered. Something like guilt, maybe. Or maybe just calculation. Your father loves you, she said finally, like that would fix it. Then he can act like it, I said. He can stop letting you erase me. Marissa's eyes narrowed. So what? She said, voice sharper now. You want an apology? Is that what this is? I paused because the truth was complicated. I didn't want an apology. I wanted my dad to say, I should have defended you. I wanted someone to admit it happened, without drafts and aesthetic and you're sensitive. But I also knew an apology from Marissa would probably come with conditions, like she'd hand it to me and expect me to be quiet afterward. I want you to stop lying, I said. To yourself and everyone else. And I want you out of my studio. Marissa's face went stiff. Fine, she snapped, turning toward the door. Then she paused, hand on the handle, and said without looking back, You're going to regret being this unforgiving. I watched her leave and felt my knees go weak, like my body finally released the tension it had been holding. The bell jingled again. The studio smelled like roses and my own cold coffee. My hands trembled as I sat back down. That night, Dad called again. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice sounded tired, smaller than I remembered. Marissa said you kicked her out, he said. I don't know what you want from me. I'm proud of you. I'm trying. That word landed in my chest like a weight. Because he was trying, in his way. He'd never been good at conflict. He'd always picked the path of least resistance, which usually meant letting Marissa steer because it kept the house calm. But calm wasn't the same as kind. I did call him back, not because I wanted to fight, but because I was tired of carrying this alone. He answered on the second ring, breath catching like he'd been waiting. Dad, I said, voice quiet. I want you to tell the truth. He was silent. I want you to admit, I continued, that I was excluded, that you let it happen. Dad exhaled slowly. It wasn't, he started. No, I said gently but firmly, don't do that. Don't minimize it. I saw the photos. I lived it. There was a long pause. Then Dad said quietly, I didn't handle it right. It wasn't enough. But it was the first crack. I needed you, I said, and my throat tightened. I needed you to say, she's in the picture. That's it. That's all. And you didn't. Dad's voice sounded rough. I know, he whispered. I didn't want fights. Marissa. Dad, I said, and I hated how my voice shook. You chose peace with her over peace for me. Silence again. Then, very softly, I'm sorry, Dad said. I pressed my fingers to my forehead because my eyes burned. Okay. I breathed because I didn't know what else to say. Sorry doesn't rewind a decade. Sorry doesn't give you back the photos you weren't allowed in. But it's still something. It's the truth finally being spoken out loud. After that, Things didn't magically become a Hallmark movie. Marissa didn't send me a heartfelt message. Dad didn't suddenly become a different person. But the next time my business went viral, another video, another story, another wave of clients, Dad didn't post about it like he discovered me. He texted me privately. Saw your video. Proud of you. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. And on Christmas, I spent the day with friends instead of my family. People who didn't flinch when I talked about my past. People who didn't treat me like a complication. We cooked too much food, laughed too loud, took photos without anyone needing to decide who counted. When we set the timer and ran into frame, nobody blocked me out of habit. Nobody said, not you. I still feel a sting sometimes when I see family photo posts online. The neat rows of smiling faces. The matching outfits. The "we're so blessed" captions. Because I know how easy it is to make something look whole when you've quietly pushed someone out of the edge. But I also feel this steady pride now, the kind that sits in your bones and doesn't need anyone's permission. I took the thing that hurt me and made something out of it that helps other people. Not in a cheesy motivational way, in a practical, real way. I built a business where people don't have to wonder if they belong in the frame. And maybe the most satisfying part isn't that I went viral, or that my calendar stays booked, or that strangers tell me my work made them cry. It's that if Marissa ever looks at a family photo now and feels that little pinch of discomfort, if she ever worries someone will notice who's missing, good. She should, because I'm not missing anymore. Not from my life, not from my story, not from the photos I choose to make.